This is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview, recorded live on blogtalkradio.com on December 18th, 2007. Stephan Pastis is a big fan of Ricky Gervais, creator of The Office, and Larry David, co-creator of Seinfeld and creator of Curb Your Enthusiasm. He also loves him some Cheryl Hines. As a matter of fact, I think the only reason I landed him on the show today is because I interviewed the Curb Your Enthusiasm co-star, and that gets him 1 degree closer to her. Pastis' Pearls Before Swine comic strip has twice been named Best Newspaper Comic Strip of the Year by the National Cartoonist Society, in 2004 and again in 2007. And it is that funny and that weird. Well, Zeba neighbors, prepare yourself. I'm about to bring Stephan Pastis on the air with us. Stephan, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Media.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good. May I call you Mr.?
May I call you Dr. Doolittle? You may call me whatever you like, but I got to start here. How long have the animals been talking to you?
Oh, my goodness. You know, I think I drew Rad in the very first strip I did back in, I drew him in law school, so that would have been 1991, I think. So it goes back quite a way.
And is there a connection between Rat being your first strip and you having been an attorney?
Oh, boy, I think so. It's one of those rare instances where I can actually remember, where I was, what class I was sitting in when I drew him. At the time, he walked on all 4 legs, and he didn't move. I would just draw this Rat in the same position in 6 panels in a row, and he would, a lot like it is now, I guess. Maybe fewer panels, but I would just draw it like that, and I would just write all my thoughts for the day and give them to him, and it just seemed to have some life to it,
Has he changed that much over the years? I think I read that by himself he was a lot more obnoxious and didn't quite click. But once you added Pig, it just seemed to work better.
Yeah, I think so. When he's by himself, he's too much. He's too acidic. He'll overwhelm you. But I think when he's with Pig, because of that friendship, you sort of assume that he can't be that bad of a guy because, he's got Pig for a friend. Going to your Cheryl David thing, it's a lot like what she does for Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm. She, at least until she left him, she makes him more appealing because you figure, well, there's got to be some soft side to Larry if he can have someone that sweet for a wife.
Now, I'm sure people are wondering how I made this connection to you and Cheryl Hines, but we had spoken just a week or two ago, and you had told me that you actually, I think you have some lines from The Office and from Curb, like up on your wall that you refer to.
It's mostly from interviews. Like I'll read stuff that Gervais, the creator of The Office, has written or spoken in interviews about comedy and. Yeah, I mean, he's like the top of the heap right now. So, I mean, anything he says to me is gold. And one of the things he says is that, the key to comedy is to create a character that is arrogant and pretentious while simultaneously stupid. He calls that like the Molotov cocktail of comedy. And I think that's really a key. And I'm conscious of that when I do the crocodiles because the crocodiles don't think they're lame. The crocodiles think they're quite skilled, but they're idiots. And so, yeah, I'll look at those quotes now and then from Gervais to sort of remind me what comedy should be.
Well, let me ask you a question or two, and then I know that we've got some calls, and I know there's people in the chat room who will probably have some questions. And let me give out the number. It's if you want to call in and ask Stephan a question, it is 646-595-3135. That's 646-595-3135. Now, let me ask you this. Pearls, like Leo and Get Fuzzy, that are strips created by, I believe, friends of yours, Darby Connolly and Mark Tatulli, it exists in its own world, a place for anyone who's read it, where zebras live next door to crocodiles that want to eat them, and a pig and a rat are apparently roommates. Where did this whole world come from? What,
That's a good question. To me, I think that the key to creating a strip is to create it from the bottom up rather than the top down. And what I mean by that is just focus on writing individual strips, make them as funny as you can, and let the characters, the setting, all of that flow from those strips. In other words, the joke should come first, and they will tell you what you need character-wise, setting-wise. Whereas if you create it from the top down, i.e. you say, okay, I'm going to do a strip where the main characters are like this, and they have these jobs, and they live in this town, you're really tying your hands. And you've got to do this 365 days a year, so you want that canvas to be as broad as possible. So to answer your question, I really wasn't conscious of the world I was creating when I created it. I just did strips that I thought were funny. And even now, as a result of that, I don't know a lot of the answers to those questions. I mean, where do rat and pig live? They seem to live together. What part of the country? I don't know. And it does lead to some logistical mistakes. For example, the zebra lives next to this fraternity of crocodiles, but somehow that there is this family of crocodiles with a dad, a mom, and a kid, and they don't seem to live with the rest of the fraternity, and they're also next door to zebra. So, as are the lions. So the only way I've told myself that it works is that one of them is the neighbor behind Zebra's house, one is to the side of Zebra's house, and one is to the other side. But, I'm the creator, and I'm not sure. So,
Are there rules that you've established for yourself over time? Like, for example, in Tatulli's strip, Leo never talks. And he doesn't have any intention of anyone in that strip ever actually speaking, although they write notes and they watch television. What are the rules in the Pearls Before Swine universe?
Well, I don't have too many. I know that in an early strip I had Rat's father die, so I can't have him have a father. I know that. When the predators talk, either the lion or the crocs, I have to remember to do it in lowercase. I really don't. I don't have that many rules, I guess. I'm thinking about it. Maybe there are some I can't think of.
Well, let's take our first call. Are you on the line?
Hello?
Howard,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, Howard, do you have a question for Stephan Pastis?
I do. Stephan, great strip. Love what you do. And I'm curious, and this is the question that I see on the chat that others have as well, is the whole idea of crossovers with other comic strips. Where did you get that idea? I mean, I think of all the strips out there, you tend to play homage or take umbrage with a lot of other strips that are out there.
Well, thank you very much. I look back on it, it's probably because when I was a kid growing up and I saw any sort of a crossover, and they didn't happen very often, but I just loved them. I mean, I just thought they were so fun. And when I do the strip, I'm really, I guess, just entertaining myself in some way. And since I have always liked them, I try to use them. Nowadays, I know most of the people whose strips I use, so I will often run them by them beforehand to see if they're, okay with them. I don't always do that, but sometimes I do. Like Rick Kirkman and Jerry Scott, I know them well, so I'll run that by them. And Bill Keane, I know well, so I'll run that stuff by them. And everybody really has been very, very cool about it. Especially the Keanes. They're terrific. I mean, Bill is great.
Howard, did you have another question, or did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess that is I have one more question for you, if you don't mind. It's about the predominance of croc strips, and I'm going to take. This is a question really coming from my better half, my wife, who also is a comic strip fan, and she sort of says, what's it with the crocs? How much, it is sort of a one gag variation. So, I mean, she says, well, when's he going to get off the crocs? I guess she likes rat and pig a lot better.
Yeah, it's funny. I keep a little chart on the wall where I kind of monitor how many croc strips there are a month, and I try to keep it at about 7 or 8. So this month there's a 2-week series, so next month there'll be less. But The Crocs are by far and away the most popular characters, and they really, for whatever reason, broaden the strip's appeal. And to those people who are in that group or came along later, they don't like it when I go and do the Rat and Pig strips. Somebody who's been reading it for a number of years and likes Rat and Pig, like your wife, for example, doesn't like when the Crocs predominate. And it's, you learn that when you do a comic strip that you can never please everybody. You have to do, what you like. But I am conscious of the fact that there's one group that likes one and one group that likes the other. So yeah, it's always a tough balance.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for calling, Howard. Howard is a huge fan. His living room. God bless his wife. I know Howard, obviously. God bless his wife because his living room is full of original comics. Original strips, and which actually something Howard probably would like to ask, and maybe other people are wondering, what do you do with your strips? Are they resold? Do you have a dealer? Do you keep them?
I keep them. We occasionally give them to editors. I will give them to family and friends. If I parody someone's strip, I'll usually give them at least one of those originals, and I'll trade with them. So. It's funny. I've built quite a collection of other guys' strips now. But I just keep them all.
Good time to remind people they can call in. It is 646-595-3135. I want to follow up on what Howard was asking about, and I see there's some buzz in the chat room as well about this. So you do tip some cartoonists off. Have there been others that you have not tipped off ahead, and that you've heard about it later?
Yes. Yes. I don't know the Blondie creators, so when I made fun of their anniversary, I didn't hear from them. I don't even know if they're aware of the strip. I did not tip off Kathy when I did the first 6 or 7, and I don't think she. I mean, I've met her now at the Reubens. She's very nice to me. I don't think she appreciated some of the early ones, which is understandable. I mean, I think if I ever kind of crossed the line, it was with how I dealt with Kathy. I think it was kind of too mean-spirited. I mean, maybe I'm getting too soft, but when I look back on it, I sort of regret that a little bit. One funny thing that nobody saw because I pulled it, but I did a series where Rat got lost in the desert, and he ran into Family Circus fans. It appeared in August or September, and Bill Keane got a hold of him and was going to kill him and something like that. Well, in the middle of that, I did a Funky Winkerbean parody, making fun of that whole Lisa Moore storyline where she was going to die, she wasn't going to die, she was going to die, she was, back and forth the story went. And I did it, and then I thought, holy smokes, this is going to draw so many complaints, because that storyline, drew tons of newspaper articles, and every, cancer person, survivor, family member in the world was going to write to me. So I went back and forth, and I sent the strip to Tom Badiuk, and he couldn't have been nicer. I mean, he was great, and he said, yeah, go with it. He thought it was funny and the whole bit, and I gave him the original, and then he gave me a couple originals, and I pulled it at the last minute. I pulled it because I just didn't want the flack. I mean, you learn over time that there are certain things that draw flack. Heavy flack. One of them is any disease, be it physical or mental. It really draws angry response. Sex, religion, politics, diseases, slurring any ethnicity, that'll do it.
Well, Stephan, Monsieur Lachaise in the chat room has a question that kind of fits with what you were just saying. Have you ever, in addition to that, I guess, had to substitute a strip because of a taste issue or a news event?
Oh yeah. It's happened a lot of times. One time early on, Rat ran for Senate or something against a guy who had died, and right in the middle of that storyline, the senator from I think Minnesota died. Plane crash. I think you're right. Yeah, I can't remember his name right now, but. And I think his name stayed on the ballot, And so, boy, that had to be pulled at the last minute because, readers don't understand that these are submitted weeks in advance. And so, that can create a bad situation. So, yeah, those were pulled. There was one where Pig was playing in the dryer once, spinning around, and that week I think some kids had been killed or shoved in a dryer or something like that. And so that was pulled for half the country. And that does happen. One really, really unfortunate one that, boy, if the timing had been a little different, would have just been horrible, was I had a strip where the Crocs were rooting for the death of that crocodile hunter, Steve Irwin, because his voice drove him crazy, and then 3 months later he was killed. And, man, if that had run that week, I think that would have been the end of me. So, it happens quite a lot.
That's a good one to pull. Stephan, we've got a caller here. Is a caller on the line?
Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to ask why some characters get names, just a few get names, and the rest are pig or rat or goat.
That's a good question. The original 4, the idea was, I just thought it was sort of funny to not give them names. I don't know why. I'm sort of proud of that, because people take that now and they'll say rat and pig, and they don't think twice, that that's just an animal. It's really not a name. And I kind of like that. But nowadays, when I add a character, I do give them names. Why have I changed? I don't know why I've changed. Yeah, they do. I'm thinking about it. The Crocs get names. Well, the duck doesn't really have a name. He's called the guard duck, so I guess that's consistent. That's a good question. I got to go back and think about that one.
Well, Stephan, you have 2 children, right? And
yes.
You named the boy and girl. Is that right?
I named who?
Your children. There's boy and girl.
Oh, yeah. That'd be pretty clever. Easy to remember.
All right. Did you have another question for Stephan? I guess that's a no. All right.
She didn't like my answer.
No. I think Howard may be back on the line here with another question. Let's take a look. Howard, are you there? Hello? All right. Well, the host is still getting to learn the technical ins and outs. I'll give you the number again. If you want to call in, 646-595-3135. Do you want to take a minute and talk about classic comic strips on newspaper pages? I know that's a topic you hate to talk about.
Fire away.
Do you think there should be a statute of limitations for characters?
Well, it's hard to say. I think a comic strip is like a novel. And I think there's a reason there aren't a lot of novels that are 3,000 pages. I think there's a natural length to a novel. And I think there's probably a natural length to a comic strip. But, who's to say? Harriman ran for, 40 years or something with Crazy Cat. And he was pretty darn good. So, can you go for a long time? Sure, Sparky did. It is possible. But at the same time, it is disheartening. You look at a comics page, and boy, the average age of the comics on a page would blow you away. Some of these started in the 1920s and 30s, and some before then. So. It is hard to understand how a newspaper can continue to attract young readers when they do that, but who am I to say?
It's interesting. I look at a strip like Blondie, which to me kind of defies the logic, in that for years I thought it had kind of dried up, and I found the last couple of years I actually enjoy it a lot more, and it seems to have gotten somewhat relevant and come back. But there are strips that you just wonder, are they strictly being kept on to keep some money coming into the heirs? Because obviously the creator is long gone. But yeah. Who's to decide? Other than the cartoonists who want that space on the page, who's to decide? When something has reached the end of the road? Yeah,
it's a really tough thing for a couple of reasons. One. People, they do these comic polls, and when they do them, let's say they do a newspaper-only comics poll, the people that are going to take the time to cut those things out and send them into the newspaper and stick the stamp on the envelope and all that stuff tend to be older people. And so these older people have seen these characters for 30, 40, 50 years, and they've seen a young strip for 2 or 3 or less. And so there's a dynamic at play there where you're just going to lose. I mean, that's a really tough nut to crack. So that's a big part of the reason right there, you know. And they do these polls, and they make no attempt whatsoever to do what every other poll that takes itself seriously does, which is to take stock of the demographics of who's responding. It's crazy. I mean, you know, if the average person responding to a poll is 62 years old, what strips do you think are going to be on that list? I mean, I could tell you what's going to be on that list. So I don't even know what your question is at this point, but I just went off on polls.
That's okay. Would you prefer that editors just, you know, make a decision themselves and stop polling the audience that way?
Well, you know, yeah, I've been able to talk to editors. I went to this features, what's it called? American Society of Features Editors, AASFE something, and I spoke there, and I got to talk to the editors, and I got to tell them this. I said, you know, you try to do these newspaper polls, they make no attempt to do the demographics, so that's flawed. So then they say, okay, well, we'll open up to online, so we'll get young people. And then they take no step whatsoever to stop someone from just cheating and voting thousands of times. And I don't know why they do that. It's basically just an invitation to cheat. It's saying that we're going to put the comic in here that has learned to cheat the best, and that doesn't work either. So I've seen some papers that do it right. I've seen, like, the Indianapolis Star did a poll where if you vote online, you have to give your local phone number, and I think they inform people that they might call the number. And so that seemed to discourage fake votes. So that sort of worked. But yeah, I would, you know, if you're not going to, if they would, I would prefer that they use their judgment, but they don't. You know, it's not a blind guess. Like, for example, walk around a newsroom and look at the cubicle walls. What's on the wall? What are people cutting out? There's, you know, what's on the refrigerator in the break room? There's an indicator. What's your kid reading? What's your wife reading? Go to Barnes & Noble and look in the comic section. What's on the shelf? There's a great way to do it. What are people spending their money on? What do people like so much they'll actually spend their money on? Go to Amazon and go to the section it's called cartooning. There's one for cartooning and there's one for comic strips. Look at the top 50. What's in there? Mm-hmm. You know, there are ways to do this, even if you don't trust fully your own judgment, rather than to open it up to, you know, rampant cheating online or just a lot of old people voting in a newspaper-only poll. There are ways to do it, and they don't do it. And, you know, this is a very sore subject for cartoonists, as you can tell by the length of my answer, but it's very hard for cartoonists to take. And you know, and I think the easiest way for an editor maybe to understand that would be to say, how would they like their jobs put up for a poll? You know, like, which editor do you like best at our paper? You know, vote and let us know. Who's your favorite? Who's your least favorite? And by the way, you can vote 1,000 times in a half hour. You know, how would that make them feel? This is our jobs. And when you do something like that, it's difficult to take. They don't do that, I don't think, with any other part of the paper. So
my wife, who's an editor at a newspaper, is probably cringing right now. Let me go back to the phones for a minute. I think Howard was trying to call in. I think we've got him back on there. Howard, are you there?
I think I'm here.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. So, Stephan, what's your work habit like? Tell us about your day in terms of, do you get up, go to Starbucks, get inspiration, come back, or do you try to bang out a bunch of strips all at once? What's your style like?
You know, it varies, but the latest thing I've been doing is I drive to a coffee shop, and I have my iPod on with songs that I've picked specifically. And I have it on so loud that I can't hear anything else in the coffee shop. Usually it's to drown out the music they play at coffee shops. That drives me nuts. I want kind of my own music. And then I sit sort of in a corner where I can't see people. I tend to have my back to people, and I've pulled the brim of my cap down real low. I know I look like an absolute freak. I know that. And then I just drink a lot of coffee, and I sit there with a notebook, and I write in script form. So it'll say rat : pig : and then if there's sort of a stage direction, I'll put it in parentheses. And I just sit there and I write like that, and for the first hour it tends to be really bad, and I always want to get up and go home. And then after the first hour, sometimes 2 hours, the ideas start to come, and more than not, the ideas come in bunches. So if you saw it on a graph, like you'd see hour 1, 0, hour 2, 1, and hour 3, 5. It just starts to all roll. And then after about 3 hours, I will drive home, and then I draw a few. But, it's the writing I enjoy the most. When there's no ideas coming, it's really tough. But by and large, writing is the exciting part. You never quite know what you're going to find that day, and it's a lot of fun. I think the only thing that really differentiates me from other cartoonists, I've talked to a lot of cartoonists about this, is music. Most people like the room to be silent, and I don't. I need the music. I need it to be really loud. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Do you do your own inking and color work?
Yeah, I do. I do all that stuff. I ink them, and then if I didn't ink them, they'd probably look a lot better. I ink them, and then I clean them up on the computer and add the Zipatone on the computer and do the Sunday color on the computer. I think most cartoonists do that now. I know a couple like Patrick McDonnell. He still does his Sundays. I think he watercolors them and then turns it into a color chart for American Color to add the color. But man, I couldn't do that if I tried.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
Yes.
Thanks again, Howard. All right. Let me remind folks of our call-in number. We've got a lot of people in the chat room, and I'm hoping some more will actually call in live. The number is 646-595-3135, and we do have a couple people in the chat room who have some questions, so I'm going to step in and ask for them. Some of them, it's funny because some people are asking questions and then other people are answering them. For example, someone
hey,
said before,
you don't need me.
Well, I know they don't need me either. I think they can do this themselves. When you were talking about that Minnesota senator, the suggestion was that was Paul Wellstone.
Yes, that's right.
Yep, and so see, we can just rely on this. And then someone asked, where did you get your pre-law degree? And then the answer came, UC Berkeley.
Yeah, it wasn't a pre-law, though. It was my major was, as all law students, I think, have, it was poli-sci, political science, and then, that was Berkeley. And then law school was UCLA.
And do you draw on by hand? Do you use the computer? I'm trying to think of the device. I saw Chris Brown use it.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I always say Wacom. I don't know, Wacom, W-A-C-O-M. I've tried that, and I couldn't do anything. I know. I think Scott does it on one of those. Scott Adams does it. I think Darren Bell uses one of those. He does Canderville. No, I just do it. I just do it on paper, and I draw on a flat table, a flat old 80-year-old desk, it's pretty low tech. When people see the room I draw in, what they usually say is, "That's what you draw." So yeah.
I wonder what guys who may be listening, like Mark Tatulli and Rick Kirkman, I wonder what they use. Just my way to see if they'll call. I know that they're out there. And another question here is, one of our guests says that some of their favorite Pearl strips involve breaking the fourth wall, and do you have any plans to do more of these?
Yeah, I do that a lot. I mean, it could definitely be overdone, but again, it always goes back to, Darby said this once to me too, does get fuzzy, and this is really true. He writes the strip to entertain himself, and I try to do that too. I mean, I think you have to make yourself laugh, and it's sort of hard to do it. But anyways, one of the things that makes me laugh is that sort of stuff. And I've seen quotes, like by Watterson, and I think one by Sparky once, where they say that that's a mistake, and who am I to argue with them? But I enjoy doing it, and the response is generally favorable. I mean, I think putting myself in the strip is probably a bit weird, but I like doing it. In fact, I like it so much. Here's the size of my ego for you. I put myself on the cover of the next book, the March Treasury. And I look like I do in the strip with the hat backwards and the goatee and the T-shirt, and I'm surrounded by my characters kind of creating havoc in the room. So I get to break the fourth wall on a book cover for once, which I haven't done before. So.
And when you're in the strip, Stephan, are those the days that Darby Conley draws the strip? Because I've seen you reference over the years that there's certain times that he writes the strip and that he draws the strip. Is it when
he draws my strip?
Yeah.
He's never drawn. He's given me a few ideas, which I've used, and there was that week once where he stole a week of my strips and pasted his own characters over my characters.
I remember that.
As crudely as possible, and which we thought was funny. But I know that anybody who only read Get Fuzzy and had no idea what Pearls was just nothing but confused to see. I think that week had the little tiny crocodiles attacking a zebra, and in Darby's strip, there were little tiny crocodiles attacking Satchel, and I don't think that made any sense to anyone who only read Get Fuzzy, but we liked it. So there you go.
I see, here's a comment. Someone wrote in, our family's favorite 4 strips are Opus, Dilbert, Get Fuzzy, and of course Pearls. What, in your opinion, do these strips have in common, and what makes them so popular?
Well, I can't speak to mine, but as to the others, those are 3 of my favorites as well. I mean, Breathed was really, and still is today, just a great inspiration to my pretty much entire generation of cartoonists. I mean, I don't think I've run into a guy who doesn't cite him as an influence. And I've been lucky enough to meet him a couple of times, and I feel really lucky. In fact, I put Opus in a strip one time, and he actually sent me a Bloom County. In exchange, I sent him the Opus strip, but so I actually have an original Bloom County, which I just cherish. I mean, it's amazing. But
wow.
So yeah, he's a big influence, and Darby's just great. I mean, Darby, he can draw like crazy. He's funny. He has a rhythm that nobody else has. The joke may or may not be in the last panel. The best line may be in the second panel. Breath had that too a little bit, and it just makes for a very original strip. And he created characters in Bucky and Satchel that are 2 of the best characters created today. And of course, Scott, I owe my whole career to. I mean, I learned how to write a 3-panel strip from literally sitting in the bookstore and studying Dilbert books. I always tell people that too. People that write to me and ask how to write a comic, I say, buy a bunch of Dilbert books, because that's how I learned. But yeah, so I don't know. All 4 of them are edgy too. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it does seem to me that the strips that have succeeded in the last 10 years have all been in the edgy category. So I don't know.
There's certainly a different generation. I was thinking when you were talking about what collections are people buying. I know my 11-year-old daughter is a huge Zitz and Baby Blues fan, so she's stockpiled those books, and Dilbert had hit a high. I guess that it hit that high. I guess at the point where it was a cartoon for a while, and then it kind of tailed off, and it hasn't quite reached that point. But I mean, there's you and Darby and Tatulli and well, that's about it. No.
No, there's a lot of great. I mean, Cul-de-sac is terrific. Richard Thompson, that's a new one. In fact, I just talked to him last week. I just called him and told him how great I thought the strip was. I think F- is great. There's Agnes, Brevity, Pooch Cafe. Speed Bump, Coverly is brilliant. Bizarro, rhymes with orange. There's lots of great, young strips. I mean, I think the revolution is on, so to speak.
Well, and I want to add when I made that comment, and part of the problem is that most people are subject to whatever their newspaper editor puts in there because they don't take the time to track these things online. As a matter of fact, one of the questions here is, how do you feel about online comic readers who seek out strips online instead of in the newspaper? Is that taking money out of that's the great two-edged sword. I mean, when United signed me, they signed me to put me into newspapers, and then they backed out because they thought it would never sell. So they put me online to see how I would do, and when Scott Adams endorsed it, the hit skyrocketed, and I made it. So that wouldn't have happened without being online. So I'm created
I don't exist but for that. So that's in the good category. Another good category is, for example, I don't run in Des Moines, right? It's one of the biggest cities that I don't run in. So if you live in Des Moines and there's no online, you would never have heard of me. But because I'm online, someone there can read it, and then they can write their paper and tell them to pick up the strip. So those are the good things. The bad things are you make very little money. No one really has figured out how to do this yet, to make money online. So that's one bad thing. Another bad thing, when a newspaper cancels you, you will get a reader writing you saying, hey, my paper dropped you this week, but it's okay because I can read you online. And you're thinking, no, it's not okay, because I lose money from that. So you tell them, that's not good. So it goes both ways, and I don't know what the answer is, and right now I don't think anyone else does either. It's very confusing. What should we be doing? Should we pull off entirely and not make ourselves available online? Should we only make a week available? Should we stagger it so it runs behind what you see in the newspaper? I think King Features does that. I don't know. So.
Well, if it won't make you feel any better, but Mr. Media started as a syndicated weekly newspaper column that the Universal Press carried about 1996 to 1998, and that was at the time they were just starting to put comics online on the web, and they were trying to figure out what the financial model was. And the reason that part of the reason that the column ended was that they couldn't find a way to make money online then. That was 10 years ago, and obviously it's still not producing revenue for you guys. Okay, Rick Kirkman, one of the guys on Baby Blues, has come out of the darkness and has asked this question in the web chat. He says, I can't keep silent anymore. Isn't it time that you come clean about the dirty little secret about Girls Before Swine? That is, that you have to pay big bucks to all the cartoonists whose characters appear in your strip so they'll allow you to do it?
Oh, man, where would I get those big bucks? Yes, that's absolutely true. I pay large sums of money. Do you want to know how much I paid to each?
Yes, particularly how much you paid to Rick Kirkman.
Oh, man. He's a good guy. Rick's a good guy. I've been to Rick's house. He had a big, fierce, ferocious dog that scared the bejesus out of me. I'm afraid of dogs. When you go to a person's house, by the way, this is a tangent. You go to a person's house, and they have a dog, and the dog really barks, and the person pretty much always says, oh, he's friendly, he just does that when you walk in. You can pet him or whatever. And that makes me feel a little better, but since I'm afraid of dogs, it doesn't make me feel a lot better. When I went to Rick's house, his dog did that, right?
Yeah.
And my heart was racing. I've been bitten 3 or 4 times. And my heart was racing, and I said, well, can I, pet him, maybe, and Rick looked at me and goes, yeah, you better not. And at that point, holy smokes, all I remember from that visit to Rick's house was how scared I was of that dog. And I know he's listening now, and he's thinking to himself, the dog wasn't that scary. Stephan is a big wuss, but no, I was very scared.
Well, I'll watch the web chat to see if he responds to that.
Hey, by the way, that Baby Blues parody, it appeared a couple of years ago, where I had Rat babysit the Baby Blues characters, and Rat was drunk, and he sent the kids on a beer run, and they ran into a gas station and killed the kid from Zitz. That really triggered a lot of negative response, as if I had let a real person take care of real kids and had them be drunk. I mean, it was amazing. And Rick made the mistake of defending me to some people who wrote to both of us. And it seemed they were almost as mad at him as they were at me for, quote-unquote, letting me do this to the Baby Blues characters. But, yeah, it was really weird. But yeah, both he and Jerry were great about it. They're great sports. They're good guys.
Let me give out
what Rick says about me. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me give out the phone number again, folks. You can probably tell we've got a lot of action in the web chat and not so many live calls. So if you've ever had a question you wanted to ask Stephan, now's your chance.
Tell Tatulli to call in. Where are you, Tatulli? Call in.
He helped feed me some questions, and of course he introduced us. So I know he's out there. I know he's listening. The number is 646-595-3153. 35. Oh, let me see. What do we have here? Kirkman answers back. He says, I haven't been able to do much because I keep losing the connection. Okay. Well, and I have seen that a few times in here. A couple people have had trouble with the connection, and several people are very fond of the Baby Blues parody. I want to ask you, character-wise, you were talking about your fear of dogs, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the only dog in Pearls is chained up and never goes anywhere.
Yeah, he's a new character, and in fact, I just did like 5 more of those strips. You won't see him till, I don't know, May or June, but that little dog, it's a little dog that's just on a chain, and for whatever reason, he really resonated. You know, you never know what characters will resonate and, you know, which ones won't, but that guy really did, and I think it's just that chain metaphor. I mean, I think everybody feels that in one way or another they're, you know, chained to something. That's one reason. But the second reason is that dog, his name is Andy in the strip, that dog is the only character, I guess Pig is one, but he's really the only character that is optimistic, like really optimistic. The strip is so cynical, but that little dog really thinks that he'll get off that chain one day, and I think, I don't know, I think that sort of resonates.
He's going traveling, as I recall, most recently. He was didn't he have like some travel brochures?
Yeah, he was gonna travel, and I think in I don't know when this appears, in February or something, he gets a girlfriend, and well, I won't give it away.
Okay. All right, well, we've got
yes.
Stephan, we've got another call here. Did you have a question for Stephan Pastis?
Yeah, damn it, I thought I'd call in.
I thought I knew who this was.
Yeah, I do too. I recognize that smoke-filled voice.
Hey.
Hey, Mark, is that you?
What's going down, Mark?
Stephan,
yes.
Let me think if I have a question for you. Can you expand on your the whole theory about comic polls?
Yes, should I say more? Did I not say enough about that? What?
Did you get it off your chest?
I know, I really went off on that, didn't I?
No, I agree with you 100%.
Hey, by the way, I'm giving this strip away. Everybody's going to know this now, but I did a strip this week. I don't know when it'll appear, next summer. And Pig is holding a newspaper, and if you read it's a newspaper that is for comic strip characters, and only comic strip characters. But the headline of the paper, if you use a magnifying glass, it says, Leo kid waterboarded, won't talk.
You made it work.
Yeah, I snuck it in.
I don't think you can get much more out of that, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I don't. It's really small, too.
I'm not well known enough, and it would be just too inside. Well, and you're too big for to do it, and you know I'm too
I don't know, but it's funny. You'll see it.
I can insult other comic strip characters with complete immunity right now because they can't come back at me because nobody will know what they're talking about.
That's really funny. See, Mark's great because Mark draws more flack than me now, and that's he runs cover, so that's terrific.
And the people on the web chat, I can see that they're kind of wondering who we're talking to, Stephan. This is Mark Tatulli, creator of Leo, and also Heart of the City. Leo's one of the fastest growing strips of the last couple of years. What are we talking now, 250, 300 papers? Well,
let's just say 400, shall we?
Oh, sorry.
No, somewhere in that neck of the woods. I have no idea. It changes month to month, but it's around the 300 range right now.
Wow. And Mark,
I'm in 1,500, Bob.
Well, Mark, it's only been 18 months, 2 years. Mark, folks,
yes.
You can see this if you look. Mark was actually the first cartoonist interviewed on Mr. Media. But Mark, I know you're a Pearls fan. Obviously, you wouldn't be calling in other than to hassle.
I think I'm the original Pearls fan. I defended Stephan Pastis way back when they said, "Look at this shit in the paper." Oh, can I say that?
Yeah, of course.
Can we drop the S-bomb?
You can actually.
Sorry about that.
I would have done that an hour ago.
Look at this. What is this? Flat characters talking on a wall. And I said, people, you're just not reading this strip. It's great. It's nothing like it in the paper now. I mean, he was the original. I mean, Get Fuzzy came out a little earlier. I think came in 1999, I believe. And he really changed things up because he had that great drawing style that reminds me of Tintin, and then I mean, I think that if newspapers were more part of the national dialogue now, Get Fuzzy would be introducing new words to our vocabulary because he just comes up with new phrases that are just great. But then Stephan came along, and his strip was just so acerbic and so just it was rude and it was funny every day, and that's what just made it just great. And I thought, oh, this is great. This is a new wave of comics coming through. This is going to be huge. But,
yeah, you know what the thing is too. Thank you. And now I got to be nice to Mark.
I know, and that's a real struggle for you.
But the great part too is, you know, with Mark coming along and like Cul-de-sac and F- and some of these, it is really, really opening things up. I mean, when you're in a newspaper and you're the only edgy strip, you just get killed. I mean, every complaint is about you. You're just the most hated thing. And when there's 5 or 6 of you, you know, there's safety in numbers. And so that's one great thing about having someone like Mark on the page. And another great thing is the more of these edgy strips you have, the more likely that the paper will draw young readers, and all the better for you if you have sort of a young, edgy strip. So, yeah, we need more like that.
And what I've noticed, too, is that editors, as they become younger and I guess more hip to the kind of strips that we do, is they defend us a lot stronger now. I mean, when there's a comics poll, I've noticed, and my strip is not volunteered as one that will be dropped. Older readers will call in and volunteer, say, why don't you get rid of Leo? Get rid of Leo. Get rid of that crap. I don't know what that is. So, but the editors will come to the my defense. So, yeah. I think they're catching on, and it's a tough process because they don't want to lose their older readers, but at the same time they want to attract new ones. So,
and you know what, too, to add to what Mark is saying, I do think that change is happening. I do think that newspapers are now pretty much well aware that they are losing, I think it's about 3% every 6 months. So they're losing quite a few readers. And I think what that is, I'm not an expert on newspaper, Bob, maybe your wife could say more about this, but I think what it is, it's just a factor of the older people, passing on and not being replaced by a younger reader. So they are learning that, they need to take a shot at really attracting these younger readers. And so you are seeing, some of the legacy strips go and some of the younger strips coming along. At a minimum, what you're seeing is editors who are trying to balance the page. Do a few strips that appeal to older people and some that appeal to younger people. And so, yeah, it's happening.
Stephan, let me ask you while we have Mark on the line. I know there was news in the last couple of months that Leo was optioned, I believe, for a movie, and congratulations to Mark on that. Is there any action, and this came up in the web chat too, is there any action on maybe a Pearl's cartoon or movie?
Yeah, it's really, it's really weird. I don't know why. Mark knows all this. I talked to him about it, but in July, August, September, October, for whatever reason, I started to get contacted by producers. And, it had happened a little bit in the past, but a bunch of them hit all at one time, and I don't know how that happens. I don't know if your name gets bandied about somewhere or something, but for whatever reason it happened, and they all seem to want to do the same thing, which is something related to TV. And I think I'm a little more leaning towards movies because I'd kind of like to write the script. And TV, you almost have to live in Los Angeles if you're going to do that. It's a lot more work, ongoing work. And so I don't know, but I mean, I'm kind of keeping everything open right now, and I would like to animate it one day. I think that would be pretty fun. And I am, as we speak, trying to write a movie script. So it centers largely around the crocodiles. But yeah.
Well, then that matches up well with a question that came up on the web chat, and that is, what do the crocs sound like?
Oh man, I hate to say it, I hate to do it because then I influence people, and I know everybody has a different take. I mean, I have probably had 60 different, ethnicities suggested to me, and all of them think they know for sure. The most common I hear is Cajun, But to be honest with you, I don't really know what a Cajun accent sounds like, so I can't say whether those people are right or not. But yeah, that's a very common question.
Yeah.
I do read them for my kids.
I'm going to duck out of here now.
All right. Hey, Mark, thanks a lot for calling.
Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. I'll talk to you. Bye.
Take it easy. Well, that was nice. That's kind of a twofer for people listening, I think.
That is a twofer. Now, if Cheryl Hines will call in, my day will be made. She's not going to call in, is she, Bob? It's not going to happen.
I'm working on connecting that for you. I am. I got the wheels turning on that.
I'll even take a Jeff Garland.
You mean 2 Jeff Garlands or 1 Cheryl Hines? What about in terms of adapting pearls for another medium? What about like a comic book, like the Bongo adaptation of The Simpsons?
Yeah, that I would like to do that. I mean, it'd be so much work. I mean, the other thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to write a book, sort of like Scott did with The Joy of Work and all that. Sort of my perspective on life, but then fill it with a lot of strips that sort of illustrate the stories I'm telling. So it's not what you're saying, but it is, it is something different. Yeah, it's hard because when you're a comic strip guy, you have pretty much full control. I mean, my editors don't say very much to me. And when you go into any of these other realms, even writing a book, you walk into, a little more editorial supervision in terms of, I don't know, your editor's sort of a partner on the book. When you start doing screenplays, then you really give up a lot of control. And it's hard. Comic strip guys, if they have one thing in common, well, other than depression, I suppose, is I think we're control freaks. I think we're all juvenile. We have a lot of we drink a lot. We all drink a lot. We have a lot of things in common. But I think we're all control freaks. I think that's one of the things. We are all control freaks. So.
Well, Stephan, we're winding down. I'm going to give out the phone number one last time, but I've got plenty of questions to last us if that's where we go.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
The call-in number, folks, is 646-595-3135. And by the way, I just want to thank everybody who's participated in the web chat for Mr. Media today. It's been great. I've only shared a few of the things that have come off of there. People have been having a good time talking to each other while they're listening to you talk.
Where is the chat? How do you get to the chat?
Oh boy, I don't know. I know how I get to it.
I've asked the wrong person.
Yeah, I've never been in as a participant. So isn't that sad? It's probably somewhere on the page, blogtalkradio.com/Mr. But I don't know. You've often said that Rat is closest to you, and I assume you mean that personality-wise. So I wondered, who do some of the other characters get aspects of their personality from? A couple times I ever got to talk to Sparky, I asked him that question about Peanuts, and he said that they were all parts of him. And I didn't really understand the significance of that until I did my own comic strip, and that is so true. What he said to me was, you can't write one based on someone else because you don't know anyone else well enough to really get inside the character, and you got to live with these characters for years. So, like I said, I didn't know the significance, but when you start to do a strip, you realize that they have to be sort of based on you. So they're really all me. Goat is me. I read a lot. I read a lot of history books. A little bit cynical. Rat is the most natural voice. I mean, if I had my way, I'd probably write only for Rat all the time. It's just a voice that's easy for me. Pig is, I guess the sweeter side of me, which rarely shows itself. But, that's me too. The crocodiles, I will actually walk around the house talking like that, annoying as that may sound. Zebras, I don't know who Zebra is. I guess that's me. The duck is me, and to the extent I, can't stand a lot of my neighbors, and I don't sit out there with a bazooka, but something to that effect. So that's sort of me, and yeah, they've all kind of got to be you. And I think you mentioned that Andy the dog was the most recent character added.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that right? Do you have any other characters coming in the next year?
I keep wanting to do this monkey. Monkeys are the greatest animals, and I have a boy. I have a character who's a cross between a boy and a monkey, and I love the way he looks, and I just can't work him in. I haven't been able to figure out a way to work him in. I think he's called the boy who's just barely a monkey. I think that's what he's called. And I really want to work him in, and I haven't figured out a way to do it yet. So there's a cat who you'll see more of next year. He's Zebra's cat. He was really popular. I'm trying to think. I know I'm leaving somebody out that I just created, and I can't.
I think if you're gonna do the monkey character, you're gonna need as much space for type as the Pajama Diaries usually has. where it's just that fraction of art and everything else is text.
Yes.
Just to get that title in.
That's true. That is quite a long title.
What you mentioned that you were working on a book. Is there, and you earlier you mentioned Bill Waterston. Is there ever that? Do you ever have that day when you think, you know what, I'd like to take 3 months off or 6 months off, and not do this for a while?
Like last Thursday, I really hit a wall, and I'll tell you, any cartoonist you talk to, they'll tell you this exact same thing. There are days where you look at what you've done, you go, oh my God, I will never be able to do that again. It's over. I cannot think of one idea. I'm in the wrong profession. I mean it, like I'm saying kind of jokingly, but it's over, and it is a horrific feeling, and it hits. It usually hits during days where I'm down, and you can't do anything. And on those days, yeah, you think that. You think, man, I could really, but you think 3 months isn't enough. I mean, you need a year. But there are other days, like Saturday, where I wrote, and it just flowed. I mean, there were 5 or 6, and it was just a dumb little drawing. I drew a croc in a circle, and the circle looked like he was standing in a sewer. So I thought, I've never put them in the sewer lines before. I could probably, riff off of that somehow. And that turned into a week of strips where they try to get into the zebra's house through the sewer. By the way, anyone listening in, you don't have to read the strip for the next year because I've given away every single plot line. So, but no. So there's some days where you hit it and you go, wow, that's terrific. But I will say that. Maybe it's because I was a lawyer for 9 years, but I really love doing it. I don't always love drawing it. Drawing is hard for me, but I really, really love writing it. I mean, that process is so... I would do it if I wasn't paid. I would do it as a hobby. I would do it because I love to do it, and that's why it's infuriating. If you're syndicated, you get guys that write to you and say, oh, you got this idea from this TV show or this comic strip or whatever, and you're stealing your ideas. And that's such a strange concept to me. It's like, someone who enjoys fishing running to the grocery store and buying a salmon. Why would you do that? I mean, it's the act of doing it that you love, and I love writing.
Well, and Stephan, I'm going to interrupt you because I somehow we've come to the end of an entire hour.
Oh my goodness, how did that happen?
Before we get cut off, I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us on Mr. Media today.
Oh, you bet. It's my pleasure. It's lots of fun.
I think everyone's had a good time. And folks, if you'd like to keep up with Mr. Media's Friday interviews, you can subscribe to the site via email at www.mrmedia.com. You can also subscribe to the feed via the podcast section of iTunes. Please come back again next week for another Fridays with Mr. Media.